What we know is that he is Canadian. He started his career as an accountant for PwC, and then he joined one of his clients, Cal Energy, that eventually, through acquisitions, became, over the years, Berkshire Hathaway Energy. So he has a career he's an energy executive, really, and that's where he cemented his reputation for being a skilled manager and acute investor.
You had that line in your story, which is today's big take. The accountant turned energy executive is finally taking the reins of Berkshire, the $1 trillion conglomerate with almost 400,000 people. Have you gotten a sense of what the sentiment is like inside the company? Is he well liked, or are they more cautious? Because Warren Buffett's shoes are definitely big shoes to fill.
There are very big shoes to fill, and it's complicated to know exactly what people within the company think. It's also kind of complicated for people outside the company to have an opinion about him, because he's going to take over the capital allocation for the stock portfolio. He doesn't have a track record for that. He's going to be atop the insurance business. He doesn't have a track record for that. So there are many unknowns yet. Still, he's done so much for the energy business and grown it so much over the years and made it a big contributor to earnings that he's got that for him. And he also comes at a time when Buffett's investment strategy hasn't been the best. There's been a few mistakes and a few drawbacks recently. I'm thinking about Kraft Heinz, which he orchestrated the merger of a decade ago and is announcing a split up now, and that resulted in an impairment charge.
So for most investors, the metric that really jumps out at them is the amount of what their war chest is, what the amount of cash they can put to work. That number now is $382 billion. It's been that big number for a long time. And the reality is there's not many things you can not many things you can buy that will make a dent in that. Does Greg Abel have any new ideas, like maybe, returning cash to shareholders?
That's the big question. And in fairness, no one really knows what's going to happen. What we know is that Buffett was really not in favor of paying a dividend. He paid just one dividend in 1967. He recalled this as a bad dream in his letter this year. In terms of return to shareholders, they have been buying back shares in recent years. It's been more than a year that there hasn't been any buyback. That's an indication that Buffett thinks the shares are a bit overvalued and it doesn't make sense to really buy them on the market. But with a growing cash hoard that yields not as much as it used to, because the short-term rates are falling, and little opportunities to put your cash into work, because when you have that size, now what can you buy in one go? It's complicated. The questions around a dividend are definitely going to come a bit more harder.
I love this tidbit at the bottom of your story that said that one reason Buffett enjoyed unprecedented leeway is his $145 billion stake in the company. Abel is a billionaire, but relatively little of his wealth is tied up in company shares. So how do we square that from one executive whose wealth and he's just the company, and then you have Abel?
It's true. It's very different, and it's a different situation for both of them. I mean, Buffett had the majority of his wealth comes from the shares of Berkshire Hathaway. His salary has been $100K for many, many years. It's never changed. So this is a very peculiar approach to managing a company of that size, right? Abel doesn't have that much wealth into the shares, but we'll see how it's going to play out when he takes over next year and what it's going to mean for the business. What we can tell now is that he's been starting to implement some changes after pledging continuity. Eventually, there are new managers in place. This is something that is positive for investors and observers, because we knew little about a lot of the people working at Berkshire Hathaway, apart from the ones that are on the stage every year in Omaha. So we'll get to see what he wants to do next to make Berkshire his own.
For most companies, when they have their investor day, their analyst day, what they do is they bring out executives from all their big divisions. And so you can get to see them, meet them, hear their strategies. It ain't that way at Berkshire. It's just basically Warren's show, and this is who cares who's in the background. Is that going to change, do you think?
That's, again, another key question that I think is going to be addressed pretty soon. There is diehard fans of Buffett still have sometimes bemoaned the fact that the approach to corporate governance was a bit peculiar for a company that size. It's one of the only companies. It's the only company of that size to not have an investor relations function. As you mentioned, there's no roadshows, there's no events with analysts to introduce the deep bench of executives at the company. So this is something that when Buffett was in charge, everybody was giving him a lot of leniency because they were fans of him and they trusted him really. With Abel in charge, there are question marks as to whether investors and observers are going to be that lenient with him.
Just looking at the stock over the last 5 years, compounded annual growth rate of the S&P 500, 15%. Warren Buffett's stock, Berkshire, 16.9%. It's effectively an index.
Yes.
It's effectively an index.
That's amazing.
So it's been that way for a while, I think.
One tidbit that you also mentioned, and I feel like people forgot, is how it was an accidental reveal during one of the big conferences that Abel is going to take over. Was there any detail in your reporting that surprised you?
What do you mean?
When you were reporting this big take, were you surprised by one thing, or did something catch you off guard? You were not expecting it?
Well, I mean, what is surprising is really the profile of this executive that's going to take over one of the biggest companies in America, and that is really low profile. There's not much about him either. That is very surprising. Usually when someone comes in place, there's been some grooming, and you can see some people, some interviews out there.
That's true.
There's very little about him. So that, I think that is the biggest surprise in my reporting, is that there's so little we know about him, and we're going to find out more in the future.